This video starts on a white screen. The Microsoft logo appears. The screen fades to black. A green background featuring the letters A and I appears, followed by a slideshow showcasing new technologies.
AI for Accessibility is a Microsoft program committed to influencing the future of technology to empower people living with disabilities. Whether reimagining the future of accessible education, building experiences that are accessible for people of all abilities, or developing AI-powered technology to make the world more inclusive, we are pushing the limits of what AI can do.
Screen fades to black. A speaker appears.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. Together with me are Patrick and Guy from Zammo.AI. Patrick and Guy, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself for our audience?
Hi guys, I'm Patrick Gilligan. I am the Director of Product at Zammo and excited to speak and give some insight today.
Hi everyone, my name is Guy. I'm leading the engineering at Zammo and also excited to share what we've been working on today.
I know that the team has been involved in a really interesting project that has to do with ease of use when we're thinking of job seeker experience. And there's a lot of barriers nowadays in terms of the experience that anybody looking for a job has, but especially true if we're thinking of people with disabilities. So can you tell us a little bit more about what the project was about and why Zammo decided to take on that body of work?
I think from the Zammo team, one of the things that really interested us in kind of this body of work and this project is just our product in itself. We feel is well positioned, for being accessible. So what I mean by that is we are a voice-first architecture where someone can come in, design and build, a bot and an application, and they're able to deploy that across, voice and chat platforms. And really our overarching goal with, our customers as well as, this project and the community is we want to really just be an accessible interface to be able to expose information to everyone, to be able to come in, find that in, really the easiest manner as possible to kind of achieve what their kind of, needs and goals are. So we were really excited to, dig into this body of work. One, we thought we had, a platform that was well suited for it. Two, kind of the expertise, in-house. And then three, really just working through the the foundation and process to really research and understand what we're kind of looking to achieve using the technology. So at the end of the day, we're really putting out there a solution that was going to be valuable to to the end users and really solve a goal and a need in the space.
And as we think of the solution that you created, and I know it's open source, I know that folks can plug and play and use it. I guess my question has two parts to it. One, what is the journey that you envisioned for a candidate? And then connected to that, how can companies use it? And then from there, can you tell us more about the technology?
So there's multiple parts to the question. So maybe let's first start with the journey. So research and interacting with user was first enlightening, and second, also helped us better understand the process, where when you think about job seeking, there's a lot of steps. A few ones, obviously, there's the full detailed research, but this is kind of a summary. There's, first of all, finding the actual job. So that's kind of pretty common, regardless of the users and their abilities. Everyone is just trying to find opportunities. The second is, once you found opportunities, is to kind of assess if the opportunities matches with your skills or with what you want to do. And that assessment was, I think, the most enlightening part for us during the research, because people will go to great lengths to really try to understand if they are a fit or not. And it goes from just reviewing the job application itself all the way to searching what the company values are, what people are saying about the company, and also really understand where, if they could fit or if there's something lacking. And that's important because with users with disabilities, that step is even more important, because information around how the company or the job specifically relates or specifically has impact on the disability isn't as always available. So they'll go and try to continuously search for that. Once they've done that assessment, feel a little more confident, then there's another step, which was also a discovery for us, which is when they're applying, there's really quite, I would say, an adventure into figuring out some websites work different than others. Some websites are more complex than others, depending on what device you have to access that. So once you get that steps, manage to get your information in, there is, I would say, final step into the seeking and application part, which is trying to get feedback. So did you apply properly? Were you able to kind of present yourself the right way? So that's kind of the journey that we have mapped out and identify, obviously, all the challenges throughout those steps. So really finding, getting information to see if you're fit, applying, and then expecting some feedback to positive or improvements, try to get information in there. When it comes to the second part of your question, which was how can company leverage the work that we have done, I would say the work, not necessarily even the product itself, because the work that we have done, the research highlight two different things that could be valuable for companies. One, there is the product, which could definitely help, even if companies don't necessarily have investments or budget to make their existing websites or places where people can find and apply for jobs. It's a good opportunity to kind of bridge the gap at a lower investment, with a lower investment. They don't need to rebuild their whole website. Conversational AI, AI in general, can help take that leap. The second thing is just identifying in that journey where are the gaps with what they have. Usually, obviously, we can bring in conversational AI, but it's like bringing a huge hammer and thinking that, okay, I can solve everything with AI, but there's just some small things in terms of information you put in your job advertisement or adding an extra paragraph with some consideration. So one example I'll give here, and research will show you more concrete things, is things around, for example, one thing that really stood out for us was just explaining if people will have to carry heavy things during the job. So you could have a job description, it might seem obvious to you, but it's not to everyone. So just adding, hey, for this position, it might involve you having to carry things. And just adding that extra paragraph helps any job seekers really better assess if this will be a fit and better understand based on their abilities what are the things they need to take into consideration. So I would say the research piece is really information where are the gaps and concrete solutions. The product itself is a quick way to bridge some of the gaps to at least increase the possibilities for the users.
Perfect. And if I were to think of, I'm a job seeker, I want to interact with this technology and get information from the job description or things that are important to me regarding the role. What sort of queries can I have, or what sort of things can I expect? Is it in terms of the things I can query, and how can I get responses back?
So I think in terms of what job seekers can expect, so I mean, first and foremost, we also expect and kind of hope this product will continue to kind of grow and evolve. In an existing state, really the kind of core functionality that we focused on is the ability for it to kind of live on top of that journey. So you can move between multiple job applications, you can move between different sites. You could go from a Lever to a LinkedIn. Obviously, the company wanted to embed it, they can keep it more localized into that content. So really in the core functionality, when you do engage with the chatbot, what we're doing is we're localizing to the page that you're on, the job description you're on, the application that you're on. And with that, we have kind of two levers on top of that. So we're essentially ingesting that existing information. And we're allowing a job seeker to, really in just plain conversational back and forth, ask those types of questions. So, they don't have to try to read through the entire page or scan through the page or listen to it on a screen reader. They can really just ask conversationally with the bits that are important to them. The two layers with that is we are actually leveraging OpenAI technology as well. So the kind of two levers is one, the localized on page, ask questions, get kind of the responses back from that context. But the beauty is that you can also ask some of those higher level type questions leveraging OpenAI. So contextually, it will still know that I'm on a job page for this company on this role on this job site. I'm asking questions about this, and I'm also asking something that's outside of this, but I know that context within OpenAI to help give a better response. So I think one of the good examples that we tend to give, and we found this in the in that research journey as well, is I come into the site, I ask a couple of questions around it. I ask for what the salary is because that might be something that's really important to me, or a deterrent one way or another. It gives me the salary of that that application, and then instead of now having to go to Google and search what's the average salary for this role in my location, I can do that right from the chatbot. And even though it's not the localized content, it will use OpenAI to give that information. So it's kind of a guardrail approach to ask localized questions there, but also have context to be able to explore kind of deeper as well to kind of keep you in that one kind of centralized journey. The other side I'll just kind of add to that as well is if companies are interested to kind of go deploy this, there's kind of two sides to it as well. Depending on data privacy, they can opt in to collect data that users are asking or not. And one thing, if they do, opt in to collect data or users are open to doing that, it also lets companies understand what users are asking. So if they are asking for questions on this job page that they don't have, information on, such as do I have to carry heavy objects, things like that, it gives them that insight of what they can start to go and incorporate into those job descriptions that people are asking for, directly to again help kind of improve that experience, or questions they're asking that might be outside of that job description that they're leveraging something like OpenAI to still at least get responses back, in that journey today.
And just to add a little more to Patrick's response, I think the OpenAI model and the generative AI that we are using really brings quite a bit of value. So first, it's just the search aspect, so going and getting more information. Second, the ability to summarize. So one thing we didn't discuss in details and that you could see is it's not just spotting the place into the job advertisement, because this is part of the thing that you discover through the research. Even just the way things are phrased in a job advertisement could be difficult. So you could see a text, and just because the way the words, etc., it could be difficult for you to understand exactly. So OpenAI and the model we use, we could get into the details later on, but the model we use, we specify to the model to be as kind of a recruitment coach. So that's the personality we give. So for people that are familiar, there's something called the prompt engineering. So in the prompt engineering, we say, okay, be as explicit and as almost as if you were explaining to someone who has no context and try to help them better understand. So that's what we put into the prompt. So the response in the same sentence that's coming from the job advertisement is phrased in a way that is a little more accessible from an understanding standpoint. So there's kind of the summarization and the rephrasing. And the other thing so Patrick mentioned local context. So it talks about the document. Remote context, it could pull information from outside. I added summarization. The last one is what we originally actually came in this project for, which was read between the lines. So it's kind of becomes a pun now with generative AI, but effectively, because of the understanding of the model, it's able to look through and kind of understand things that will make sense. For example, you might not notice that you will need to travel through the job because it's just telling you there's all these customers across the US, for example, this cross the territory. But for you, you may not necessarily understand, oh, also I'll have to go do this. So you might ask, will I need to travel with this position? And it reads between the lines and tells you, yes, you will need to travel. So that's another aspect of really read between the lines, which has been, and if you look at the research, one of the things that people are mentioning is when you scan through or when you read, there's many aspects that you will just not realize because you're focused maybe on the salary, on the location, on some of the aspects of the work. There's other aspects. So you could go as very precise as, will I need to travel? Or can you give me a 5-bullet summary of this job? And when it comes with the summary, some aspects will come to it. So I think those pieces of generative AI are very important because they are very useful in this particular context to really help people better understand what they are kind of committing for as they go through. And I would also say we did not talk about it. So Patrick touched on the privacy. This is a big aspect for this document. We really want to make sure people are careful as they kind of go and build onto this project. So I can definitely refer you to the responsible AI principles, but also we highly suggest this product or this system still remains as a co-pilot of the user, as opposed to kind of as a it will tell you what's good or what's not. It has to remain as a co-pilot, where the goal of this project is to make it easier into that journey, not to kind of decide what people should do, etc. It's more when you're making decision throughout the journey, you have something that is helping you, specifically providing you things with possibly elements that you can't necessarily do yourself for any reasons, because sometimes we think about disabilities from physical disabilities, but really for me, understanding English can be challenging, and although your skills match, that gap can kind of create some friction for you. So I really want to emphasize that privacy is one aspect, making sure the generative AI is helping, not directing, is another key thing here.
Absolutely love those points. And I think it's always very important to talk about both privacy and the ethics and the principles that go into it. I also found myself nodding along a lot, Guy, as you were talking about the benefits. You know, I'm dyslexic. English is not my native language, so that highly contextualized information can be really hard to decipher. And we know that cognitive load is something that a lot of people struggle with because of the amount of information that is out there. So from a disability perspective, but even broader than disability, this can help everybody. Then I think you both made a point about mobility and mobility disability. If you have to switch between different tabs and search for information, that is a highly draining and time-consuming exercise. So having everything in one place can really increase productivity and the person's ability to look for the job and actually get the meaningful information. And I know you also did a lot of research in terms of people who might be using screen readers and how that affects their own job search and the barriers they have. So there's so much goodness around this. It's a fascinating domain where I think everybody can benefit, but it's especially important for those who have been who have had obstacles in the past to even being able to access job descriptions or taking it from there. I always ask the folks we invite to have these conversations for homework for the audience. So if you were to give the audience homework, what would that be?
I would say my main homework, and then I'll definitely have Patrick suggest a few, but my main homework will be put yourself into the shoes, and I think it's a good activity for business and HR to kind of come together and be like, okay, let's have a little workshop. We've plugged this thing that we've seen on this video, this blog, or online, which helps kind of test what the machine learning understand from our job post, ask a few questions, and kind of help the business and the HR kind of better understand the vision of what's the job seeker. So they could use that product as the job seeker, and just in general for people, just try to really understand how browsing the web differently is by going with a screen reader first time yourself, or using the keyboard only and seeing how does that feel. And Patrick, did you had that's a lot of homework already, but do you want to add a few more?
Sure. Yeah, I can tack on to that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, reemphasize obviously what Guy was saying. I think that's the at the end of the day, the biggest thing is just when you're building, designing any of that, just take the extra time to really just kind of think through those steps. And once you start to do it, you build the muscles a little bit more as well. And it isn't that much added time really when you think about design, development, that type of stuff to really improve that product, that accessibility, that interface. The other thing I would just tack on to that is, for the scope of our project, we really ended up focusing on that job application piece initially. And one of the main reasons was that's just the first step. So that's the first barrier to entry as you go. But what we discovered in the research is really there's, a desire and, appetite for that kind of co-pilot experience throughout the entire journey. So as, start to doing that, really think about that entire job seeker application journey. And how something like a co-pilot and that type of experience can help improve that as well. And we hope that people will kind of think about that and extend it and kind of take that into the future as well. I think the next biggest one was then the application stage and form filling and all of that. So there's going to be continued steps along the way, and really just thinking about that holistic journey, how it could help. But at the same time, be practical. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Like we like to do it on our side is be as agile as possible, take it iterative, make improvements, but really just understand what you're trying to get to, what that user goal is. And the more that everyone can kind of start to think about that way and do better is how we're gonna make stuff more accessible and make technologies more powerful and make it just the user experience at the end of the day that much better across the board.
Okay, I wanted to add a little bit into Patrick's last point, where he was saying, don't bite more than what you can chew. I think that one is probably, we've definitely had so many learnings, but that one is a big one. Usually when we came up with that solution, we even did realize that early on, everybody came and thought, okay, this will solve all of this problem. So at the very first initial things when we're talking to everyone, they were like, okay, this should go and help this group, and this group, which is normal and is great because the space needs innovation and people want to address those. But at the same time, when you're trying to solve it for everyone at once, it can be one, daunting, two, very hard, because some of the things come with a trade-off. You might address here, but even if you think about the solution we've came up with, it has its own set of challenges that came with it, because the dexterity that is required to still use and even type and interact could be challenging for some users. So I do want to emphasize it's okay to aim big, but it's also good to be able to be pragmatic. I think Patrick used the term, and I think it's really good to at least initiate and start solving things. I think it would still be small steps toward where we can figure things out, but it's important to complete the smaller steps. That's why we have the whole journey, we have the whole large group of users, but toward the end, we converge to a very specific first step which is already good because it will help and improve already the experience for a small subset, but that's how you iterate, because you can expand on that. And that's important because otherwise, when you're trying to solve for everyone, it'll take so much time. And
Thank you both for the wonderful conversation. As a former recruiter, this is close to my heart, and I am excited for the innovation to come to the recruitment space because I feel there's a lot of opportunity for it. We will leave the link for the folks tuning in terms of how you can learn more about Zammo and about their open source solution. And for everybody who tuned in today, thank you so much, and thank you for helping us bridge the disability divide.
better.